Okay. Well, bienvenue, welcome. Happy International Women's Day. Thank you for taking the time to be with us for perspective on how we lead from accomplished women in the Massachusetts and in the Quebec biotechnology hubs. My name is Marie Damaso. I am one of the founding members and past chair of the Greater Montreal chapter of Women in Bio. I am joined today by Annie Perreault, General Manager of BioQuebec, Kendall Berlin O'Connell, President and COO of Massachusetts Biotechnology Council, and Amy Speake, Chair of the Boston chapter of Women in Bio. I am an Executive Director of Analytical Development at Coriolis Pharma, and it is with great pride that we thank Coriolis Pharma for their generous support of the Boston and Montreal Women in Bio chapters in the mission to promote diversity and inclusion for women in the life sciences. We will learn more about Annie Perreault and Kendall O'Connell during the panel discussion. But for now, I ask Annie to tell us a little bit about BioQuebec, followed by Kendall telling us about MassBio. Annie?
If Annie is having difficulty, I'm happy to jump in and we can go back.
Right. I think we'll do that.
I'm having problems.
Okay, so we'll go to Kendall.
Okay. Thank you so much, Marie. My name is Kendall Berlin O'Connell. I'm President and COO of MassBio. And as an organization, we are so excited to partner with BioQuebec and Women in Bio to host this important event. I'm so thrilled to be here on International Women's Day with such an amazing panel of strong women leaders. Many of the themes of International Women's Day will be discussed during our conversation, including women's achievements, raising awareness of women's equality, and lobbying for accelerated gender parity. For anyone who doesn't know, MassBio is a Massachusetts life sciences trade organization representing the #1 life sciences cluster in the world, or as we like to call it, the state of possible. With more than 1,400 members from Massachusetts and beyond, our mission is to advance Massachusetts' leadership position in the life sciences, to grow the industry, add value to the healthcare system, and improve patients' lives. Our members operate at the forefront of biopharma innovation and are dedicated to developing life-saving therapies and cures so patients everywhere can have hope for a new tomorrow. Our goal at MassBio is to ensure that these companies have the tools, resources, and opportunities they need to keep making the impossible possible. Partnerships with organizations like BioQuebec and Women in Bio are critical to the collective success and, more importantly, to the future of patient health. Disease knows no boundaries, and neither should scientific innovation. We must work together to ensure that any promising idea has a chance to reach patients. So I'd now like to turn it over to my friend Annie at BioQuebec.
Okay, so Annie's still having some technical difficulties, so maybe I'll speak about Women in Bio and we'll try Annie again after that. Okay, so Women in Bio is an organization of professionals committed to promoting careers, leadership, and entrepreneurship for women in the life sciences. Women in Bio was founded in 2002, and we have 13 chapters in the United States and 1 in Canada, the one here in Montreal. We are volunteers who share the goal of enabling and empowering women to fulfill their own career aspirations. WIB's primary focus is to provide women-to-women mentorship and leadership support through all stages of career development, beginning in high school with the Young Women in Bio program, all the way to the executive level. We at Women in Bio are united in the quest to help eradicate inequality, racism, bias, and are developing an actionable plan to create true change. Diversity is imperative, and women and Bio will continue to build on the progress we have made in supporting women to achieve success across the life sciences continuum. I would like to go back to learning about BioQuebec. Annie, are you?
Yes, I'm back. I'm so sorry of all the days.
Great.
This is the second time in a row, no internet, all gone. I could hear a little bit of Kendall speaking, and I am so happy today to be here and partnering with Women in Biotech, of course, and MassBio, with whom we've been collaborating for the last 5 years. Great partnership. BioQuebec, I'm going to do this very fast. Many people know who we are. We are the BioQuebec Industry Association. We represent more than 130 members, all biotech, pharma, CROs, clinical research organization, contract research organizations. Our main goal, obviously, is to represent our members' interests and issues, support the business growth of our members. And we're very pleased today to be here to talk about women in the biotech field, women in science, and to have such a great group of women with us. So sorry about the inconvenience. I'm just crossing my fingers. This internet is going to hold until 1:30 this afternoon. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you. Okay. So before we begin our discussions, I'd like to share some key points from several recent studies conducted worldwide, in Canada and in the US. So we start with a report conducted by Catalyst in August of 2020 for women in STEM. And it states that technology occupations are expected to experience rapid growth in the coming decade. Technology and engineering are among the top sought after skills in the United States and in Canada. However, a gender gap in STEM persists across the world. Averaged across all the regions, women accounted for less than a third of those employed in scientific research and development across the world, while in Canada and in the United States, the percentage is greater at 45%. Boards of technology companies historically lacking gender diversity are making great progress. When compared to other industries, the representation of women among board directors in the technology industry remains low, but has shown the sharpest increase from 14.8% in 2018 to 17.9% in 2019. We don't have the numbers for 2020 yet. Despite improvements at the board level, the technology industry still lacks women in senior leadership. Globally, women account for only 16% of managers in STEM industry, while women account for 30% of managers in Canada and in the United States. In the C-suite, where women are only 3% of CEOs worldwide, while 16% of CEOs in Canada and the United States. Research conducted by the Center for Talent Innovation and Bio was conducted with 98 responded companies in the US and Canada. And the following points were highlighted. Large organizations are more likely than smaller organizations to have executive levels that are at least 25% female. So 75% of the large organization versus 44% of the small organizations. Small organizations are more likely to have a female CEO compared to large organizations. The number is 20% of small organizations and 9% of large organizations. Pre-revenue organizations are more likely to have a female CEO compared to profitable organizations. And the discrepancy is 25% of pre-revenue and 9% of profitable organizations. Pre-revenue organizations are also more likely than profitable organizations to have executive levels that are at least 25% people of color. Privately held organizations are more likely to have a person of color as CEO compared to publicly held, where 19% of privately held have CEOs of person of color, while 6% of publicly owned organizations. So adopting targets has been identified as one path to accelerate diversity in corporations. In Canada, we have a diversity disclosure requirement that seeks disclosure on whether the board has adopted a written policy that specifically relates to the identification and nomination of women directors or women on boards. Some of the reasons that, and if they must admit, provide reasons why they do not adopt targets for women directors or women on boards, and whether for directors or boards, the reasons were similar. One was the concerns about compromising principles of meritocracy. They also feel that talent may result in the target may result in someone other than the most qualified candidate to be selected. Targets are ineffective or arbitrary, and targets are inappropriate when considering the small number of directors on the board. And the last reason is diversity levels are already accurate. So, what has the pandemic changed? In a recent leadership report by RBC in Canada, we found that 20% of women lost their jobs during the pandemic versus 13% of men. Women are more likely to hold non-leadership roles, which were more heavily affected by the pandemic. A significant concern of this is that women exiting the labor force face the risk of an erosion of skills, which may further exacerbate the gender gap, a wage gap that exists prior to the pandemic. In terms of how we lead, according to an analysis of a 360-degree assessment conducted between March and June of 2020, women were rated by those who work with them as more effective. In fact, the women were rated more positively on 13 of the 19 competencies that comprise overall leadership effectiveness, according to the author's assessment. Notably, respondents put greater importance on interpersonal skills, such as inspires and motivates, communicates powerfully, promotes collaboration and teamwork, and encourages relationship building, all of which women were rated higher on. The analysis shows that these are traits that are more often being displayed by women, but as the crisis continues and intensifies, in many places, all leaders, regardless of gender, should strive to meet these needs. Certain Canadian women in tech are indeed embracing new ways they stand apart. Instead of apologizing for the need to alter work schedules to account for parenting responsibilities, they're embracing this as a positive change, not just for them, but also for a diverse workforce seeking the same kind of work-life balance. Their presence in the workplace is a force for positive change, regardless of the industry. The creativity and problem-solving skills they bring to the world of technology is welcome and a refreshing perspective. So, next slide. So with this background, let's start our discussion. Amanda Galbraith will be our moderator for today. Amanda is a principal at Navigator and brings over 15 years of communications experience working in the federal and municipal government, the private sector, on political campaigns, and as a journalist. Thank you, Amanda, for accepting to be with us today. We look forward to meeting the panelists and learning from their experiences.
Great. Thank you so much, Maria. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for joining us here today. I am thrilled to be hosting this panel on International Women's Day with such an incredible group of women. As noted, I am not in the biotech industry, so I am looking forward to learning. And I think, seeing female leaders in STEM and these sort of places is a really important thing that we discuss today. So first I'm going to do is introduce everyone and go through their bios very quickly. There are full bios in the slide deck, so I would encourage you to read about all the incredible accomplishments, because I think I could spend the next hour talking about everything these women have accomplished. We don't have that much time. So first, Annie Perrault, as you know, she's general manager of BioQuebec, which is an organization that supports and promotes Quebec's biotechnology industry and life sciences. She's also the chair of the board of Genome Quebec, and she's practiced as a lawyer. Her career has focused on strategic communications and public relations related to genomic research and biotechnology. Kendall Burren O'Connell, you've also heard from so far, is the president and COO of the Massachusetts Biotechnology Council. She's played a critical role in growing the organization to the largest life sciences trade association in the world. She's also a lawyer and was named top 40 under 40 by the Boston Business Journal. Clarissa Desjardins is a board member at Insmed Incorporated. The founder and CEO of Clementia, a clinical stage company focused on developing therapies for rare pediatric bone diseases, which was acquired for $1.3 billion by Ipsen. She's an award-winning entrepreneur with more than 25 years of biotechnology experience and has received the 2018 Bloom Burton Award for her contribution to innovation in Canadian healthcare. Ramani Varanasi is the co-founder and president and CEO of X Biotech Therapeutics, a biopharma company focused on the discovery and development of novel antibiotics to combat superbugs. She's an accomplished executive with over 20 years of biopharmaceutical industry experience. And she also, when she's not doing all that, volunteers as a mentor to startup companies in biopharma. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Nadine Bourgier is president and CEO of IROC. Oh, you're going to have to tell me, Nadine, how I say that. Oh, you're muted. Which is, anyway, she'll correct me, a center of excellence in commercializations and research specializing in drug discovery. Under her leadership, she has expanded its project portfolio across the country. She has decades of experience in technology assessment, transfer, venture capital, IP, and project portfolio management. Liang Schweitzer is the co-founder, president, and CEO of Hi-Fi Biotherapeutics, an emerging multinational biotherapeutics company. She's a former co-founder and CSO for Harbor Biomed, and she's a co-inventor of multiple immunomodulation drug candidates. So that is our panel today. Thank you all yes, for the discussion. Perfect. So I want to start off with leadership style. That is something when we chatted in advance of this, all of you put your hands up to talk about that. And as a female executive and leader, I've certainly gone through a journey from when I was a young woman trying to fight my way into politics to, you know, advising politicians and leaders and prime ministers and premiers. So before we actually kicked off, Kendall, you mentioned this was something you wanted to talk about. So maybe tell us a little bit about your journey and brought you where you are today.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Yeah, I think, you know, we all have a journey, and a lot of that is overcoming challenges. I think being confident in our skill set and being willing to take a risk, right? And so my personal journey, I was a practicing attorney in estate planning and elder law. And I did some self-reflecting and said, I can't do this for the rest of my career. This is not what I want to do. But I knew and felt confident that I had a translatable skill set. And so an opportunity presented itself at MassBio to negotiate contracts for our purchasing consortium. And that was my entry point into the life sciences industry. And on day one of my new job, my new position at MassBio, there was a consultant on staff that had been overseeing the program. And she looked at me and told me, you are not the right person for this job. Because I didn't have any industry experience. So she wasn't wrong about that. But what was wrong was to not be a more supportive individual to a young woman taking a risk. But that's okay. That stuck with me because 12 years later, I'm the president and COO of the company. So again, about having confidence in what your abilities were. I knew, listen, I have a lot to learn, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to invest in learning everything I can about the industry, everything I can about this role. I'm going to be willing to take some risks, and I'm going to be willing to ask a lot of questions and seek hopefully some mentorship from somebody who's a bit more seasoned. And so I think that that's important for all of us as we're thinking about navigating our career and taking opportunities that sometimes seem a bit challenging. When I was pivoting into the vice president role, I was pregnant with my first child. I didn't know what that was going to mean for me, and I didn't know what becoming a manager and taking on a more leadership role was going to mean for me. But geez, I'm sure glad I took that risk.
Well, that's good for you. I love that. I love that story. So, and I kind of see the ladies on the panel nodding as well. And there's this concept about leadership style that we should bring our whole selves to work, right? And you talked about the challenges of being pregnant and flipping into a VP position. Nadine, maybe I'll go to you. What does that mean to you as far as being a leader? Nadine, I think you're on mute.
So, okay. It's maybe go to another one. I'll come.
Okay, no problem. How about Clarissa? You also mentioned that was something you wanted to discuss.
Sure. No, I think, Kendall, your story is super interesting because you showed that you had confidence in your abilities, but that you were unsure about your skill set, or that you said something like, I want to learn as much as I can. I think that that is such an important feature of leadership. It's the feature of being self-aware and of always wanting to learn. And that is something, again, this is just statistics, right? Because I know there's a lot of men in the audience and I love men and et cetera. But statistically, men tend to overrate themselves in terms of their skills and capabilities. And women always tend to underrate it. This is just facts proven over and over again. And so we're told, oh, you need to be more confident. But there's a distinction. I disagree. You shouldn't be overconfident in your abilities. You have to be exactly like what you described, Kendall, confident in yourself. I'm capable of anything if I put my mind to it. But questioning, I have a lot to learn. I don't know everything. I'm not perfect. Perhaps women are a little bit more self-aware. Perhaps we're more open to that. And that is a great leadership skill. That would make us better leaders, in my opinion.
Romani, you've talked about the need for authenticity to bring empathy, vulnerability, and courage to leadership. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Unpack that for us.
Absolutely, Amanda. Thank you again for the organizers for inviting me to participate in this panel on International Women's Day. I'm so pleased to be surrounded here in this Brady Bunch format with women who are so accomplished. Amanda, the notion of authenticity, courage, empathy, vulnerability, these are all sort of, in some ways, wishy-washy words that we don't like to use. But at the end of the day, for us to be true leaders who want to or who can have an impact, we've got to lead by example. And you can't be anyone other than yourself in order to lead by example. I cannot turn to my colleagues, my team, and say, you must work 24/7 and then be on a beach with an umbrella drink. That just doesn't, that's not leadership, right? So at the end of the day, if you cannot be yourself, then who are you being? You cannot be a charlatan. And so I think, the notion of authenticity is sort of, written unto itself there. But one of the things that's sort of, I feel, has brought certain leadership skills out because of COVID. COVID has, really kind of turned us all into mush in some ways. And it's, many of us, it's like cats, we land on our feet. And, I think the notion of empathy and vulnerability is something I have, to use Clarissa's words, been self-aware in terms of how I have been operating as a leader. I have decided to come to my desk every morning, and instead of having my regular to-do list, which we all have, I've sort of decided to have a to-be list, which is, what am I going to be today? Today is presenting itself in such and such a manner. We keep reading on CNN or on whatever channel you watch, wherever you are, you see all these stats about COVID numbers rising and deaths rising, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I got to lead this biotech company through turmoil, through strife, through adversity. Out of adversity, though, I think you can lead your team to opportunity. And I think vulnerability, showing a team that you're suffering as well, you as a leader are not going to have the stoic face, but you are there for them at any point in time where they need to show their vulnerability. I think it actually ends up forming more of a cohesive team, and provides the whole group, the company, to be able to say, I'm here today for you, for each other, and we're all going to lead through this together. And so, one of the things I've just spent a lot of time with my team is being vulnerable, but also showing empathy. I mean, kids running in the background, dogs running in the background. I've had, team members say, I've got to, babysit so-and-so, and they sit with their kids while they're on screen. You have to have empathy. You got to put yourself in their shoes because they're putting themselves in your shoes as well. So I think, the notion of leadership in COVID times and post-COVID is going to be interesting to see how we define leadership post-COVID as well.
Nadine, I see you nodding along. Have we got your back here? Oh, audio issues are okay.
I might just add to that, Romani. I think that that's a really great point. And I've actually found that leading through COVID has allowed me to have a better understanding and a better relationship with many of my employees, because it's more sort of purposeful engagement, right? Even though it's virtual, you're spending more quality time.
I hope so. Do you hear me?
Oh, I mean,
No?
I think that's Nadine being delayed. There, or Annie. Sorry, go ahead,
Very
Kendall.
COVID. We're having technical difficulties. Very COVID.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Perfect. Liang, how do you feed into this? What do you think about, leadership style and strengths, particularly during COVID, right? I think for a certain way, I actually feel like, they say women are more empathetic, women are more, I think we are actually stronger leaders, I would argue, in COVID, or we predisposed to it. But what's your take on that?
Yeah, actually, during COVID time, actually bring out a lot of special qualities of each one of us, not women alone. And I'll get back to it about a COVID story, how the leaders, especially the women leaders in our companies, stood up. But I wanted to just, back to the original question about leadership styles. For me specifically, I wanted to share a story very similar as Kendall was sharing. Early days, I started my career from big pharma before I get to the startup world. And, being in a big pharma as entry scientist, and I realized you're not working on your own anymore as a postdoc or graduate student. So you need to learn how to work with people. A lot of things cannot be done without somebody step up and leading it. You cannot just get things done based on top management tell you what to do. So I start paying attention to say, who is going to be successful? Who can work well with others? And being a scientist, often, only think about scientific problems. When you start observing people, it's a whole different discipline. And there's nobody teach you there. There's not a book, right? So early on, I wanted to say, how do I lead by looking at other successful leaders? So man and a woman, I was at the meeting to see who could lead certain initiatives, who is doing certain, driving things forward. So I was mimicking. So during that process, I didn't know who I am. And I just say, okay, let me learn somebody else did something well. And I think I benefit from that. So that's one, if you're a junior at the early stage of your career, look at the successful example. I think one of the things we probably could talk about later is finding a mentor, who can teach you all those leaderships. I think almost towards the 10th year of me in industry, I had an aha moment. So every year I was fortunate to get to send to a leadership training. So when I was heading Sanofi Asia Cancer Research, so Sanofi had this program for women get together. So we had 3 days in Taiwan. And during this leadership training, and the first time I went through a leadership training, just a group of women, we just bonded and had a lot of discussion. So at that time, there were one question to think about is deep down, dive into yourself to think about what kind of leadership you are. Because among all the women, I could think there might be 100 different kind of leaders out there if you're putting them into subcategories. And so I think about myself, my aha moment said, what I'm thinking make me most comfortable in front of everybody else. So I come up with one word, passion. So that is something I'm really passionate about science. I'm passionate about making medicine for patients. I'm passionate about look out for my team, everybody doing well. So the moment when I find that word, I just build my leadership center around this world, And Ramani talk about compassion, understanding, being other people's shoes. We talk about vulnerability. So when you're passionate about something, you can get emotional. You can be vulnerable in front of it, like the COVID-19 times, and we're pushing anybody we identified, to neutralize the spike protein of the virus SARS-CoV-2. And there are moments where people were afraid of, start working on the project. There were moments where, you wanted to go out find partner helping you couldn't. So there are lots of up and downs. And back to your last point, Amanda asked about this special leadership at the COVID time, Ramani touched upon also, is you have to be there for people who also feeling the same struggle. You see the same challenges and help them. We share our frustration together, and we build our strengths together through this difficult time. And during my company, there were 2 women extraordinary through that time, stood up, junior leaders. One leader, was already busy with her own project, and when this pandemic hit us, we just said, could you take on this additional project on top of it? She's a young engineering leader leading the team, and not only she did it well, she actually, went through day and night leading the whole team, working through weekends, evenings. That kind of a leadership just matured during that short period of time. I was so proud of her. And the other leader, there's another woman during, the time where we do IND filing, with tons of papers, work needs to be filed with regulatory agent. And she worked with external collaborator, CRO, and make them work together with her day and night to get things done. So leading not only within your own organization, leading across the organization, that's another different leadership skill set. So I cannot be more proud of our leaders. And it's also rewarding to mentor them and bring them to a level that you think they can shine. Yeah.
Amazing. And we've all kind of started to touch about COVID, which is obviously the topic of the year. It's almost a year since it's happened. This has turned this industry in particular upside down. And we've, seen early on that it's been called the she session. It's had an incredible impact on women. But being women in, a biotechnology industry, it would have, I think, a very unique impact on yourselves and your industry. So I'm going to go to Nadine first, who, you've talked a little bit about how this is almost, while there's been great impacts on women, generally, this is actually an opportunity to focus on women and ensuring they stay in STEM. So maybe you can talk a little bit about
that. She's still with her. Struggling with.
Can't hear her.
Okay. All right. Who else I could go to? Would anyone else like to? Ramani, would you like to weigh in a little bit about how COVID has impacted the industry and kind of your thoughts? If there's, growth opportunities here to encourage women. I mean, it's an exciting time to get into medical science.
It is. Let me start on that, and then there may be others here who might be more sort of well positioned to speak about sort of the science side of things in terms of STEM involvement and how women are entering the STEM and women are entering the field. I will say, as we all know, the stats show that COVID has had more of an impact on women at all levels than it has on men. I mean, we're all multitasking and juggling and whatnot, and as it turns out, there are more women who essentially exited the workforce, including in the biotech area, than there are men. Now that really sort of, it really highlights, or I should say, it really points a spotlight on the crux of the issue, which is, why is it that the burden of support falls on one particular gender over another? And I don't want to get down, Amanda, right now, the diversity and inclusion topic, which I know we can all talk for hours about, but it's really, this notion of COVID as a pandemic causing one group of people to suffer more. And, we can talk about that again in the diversity and equity section, versus another group. You just sort of stop and pause and say, are we winding the clock back? And how is it and why is that so? Now, on the other hand, one could argue, and I think that then data shows that leadership, as Liang pointed out, COVID has actually given people who are willing to step up, immensely step up, an opportunity to step up and lead. And I would argue, and I've seen it in the Boston area, many women have actually said, screw that, I am going to step up. And this is my opportunity because certain voids have been created. And I'm going to step up and show folks I work with in the industry what I can do. And I think what you're going to see is an output post-COVID. Again, we can get to talking about post-COVID in a second. I think you're going to see more women entering the science field because, well, on the medical field, medicine has been sort of glorified, which is great because now everyone wants to enter into an MD program. That's wonderful. Same with the science program. And I would also argue again that women are saying, wait, I can lead through these adverse times or adverse times through COVID, as Leanne pointed out. I can, in my role as a junior level scientist or mid-level manager, I can create the opportunities for myself, because I have shown that in the times of adversity is when I can step up and really add value. So I don't know if I'm answering your question directly, Amanda, but I think overall COVID for women, because there's been such a disparate effect on us, I think going forward, I think it's going to actually fuel us even more to say, I can deal with adversity. I've gone through all sorts of things in my, as I've come up the ladder, as Kendall said, to where I am today. And post-COVID, it's actually going to perhaps even create more of an opportunity for women to just step into any role, especially in the biotech area.
Annie, I want to bring you into the discussion here. What is your thoughts on sort of the impact of COVID, particularly in the industry in Quebec? Oh, all right. We will try again.
Amanda.
Maybe Kendall, why don't you? I saw you nodding a lot to what Romani said, so why don't you pop in?
So, and Romani had excellent insight there, and certainly women has been disproportionately impacted by COVID, right? And it's concerning to think, because this will have long-lasting impacts on the industry, and women have worked so hard to make their way to the middle management, the senior management positions. We can't afford to lose, women as part of this. But from a positive perspective, this will allow us to understand we need to promote women within the industry and diversity within the industry broadly. If we are going to, and I can speak about it from the Massachusetts perspective, but if we're going to maintain our position on the top, we have to promote a diverse and robust workforce for future generations. And it's not just at the science level, although that's critically important. It's in all capacities, right? We need manufacturing talent. And the further we can expand that net, the more we'll have a robust pipeline. So it's something that we have to bring these women back into the workforce. I know they were impacted by COVID, but it's critically important to the success of the industry.
I would just add, if I may, Amanda, on that point, this is going to fuel even more, as Kendall was pointing out, the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative, right? We've seen it take flight after certain events happened in the United States in late summer, and it just continues to rise. And this provides the DEI sort of opportunity. It's an opportunity. It's not a problem we're trying to solve. It's an opportunity that we're trying to fill, and women are right at the center of it.
Clarissa, what are your thoughts on this? Leading teams, leading organizations as a female leader in COVID. Where do you think is this an opportunity? Is this a challenge? Is it both?
Right. No, I agree with the previous comments. I mean, it upended our family dynamics, our routine. So now you're looking at your husband and saying, okay, who's going to take care of the kids? I mean, the kids are home, and it either accentuates the inequality that existed, or it makes them, it comes to a realization that we have to change the way we're doing things here, because I have to work and you have to work. So yeah, to me, the COVID experience was one where, I personally have great support. My husband's a CEO of a biotech company, and I've been a CEO of a biotech company. But to me, the big revelation was the Black Lives Matter, because I think we all had the time to think about it and realize. And then I saw, even in myself, some inherent biases that I had, unconscious biases. I'll just give you an example. My son was playing video games, and so my husband and I went to watch him to hang out with him. And so I said, well, we're looking at him, and it's Fortnite. And so I'm looking at the screen, and I'm saying, well, where are you, Sebastian? And he's like, I'm right there. I'm shooting the other guy. I'm like, well, where are you? Because he was a female avatar. I didn't think that he would have chosen a female avatar. That's my own bias. I mean, he was standing right in front of me, because when I grew up, it wasn't cool to be a girl, or, the big sports insult was you play like a girl. But my son's not like that, and neither is his generation. His mother's a CEO. So the Black Lives Matter movement has changed our perception. It's changed mine, and I see it on the 3 boards that I sit. We now are clued into something like, oh, he has an accent. That's a red flag. You know, he has an accent is a red flag. Is it because of the skin color, or is it because he's not qualified, right? Because the former has nothing to do with the position, and neither does an accent. So everybody is attuned to it, and it's wonderful. And that carries on to equal pay. And so diversity is so key now. It's on everybody's mind. I'm on a board where there's a gay person on the board, and he was the one surfacing up any type of salary inequalities between the men and the women on the management team. So I think that there's been a whole sea change of awareness of men's and women's role in the household, Black Lives Matter, and all types of efforts and awareness that we have to include diversity in our teams.
So why don't we use that as a segue to move into the issue of diversity and inclusion, which I know is was also important to all of you to discuss, and I think is a very critical issue before us, on Women International Day in particular. So how do we increase the number of BIPOC, women scientists in this field? And Liang, I'll go to you first.
Yeah. So I think, a lot of times having the right culture, having the right mindset in the company is really important. I shared with Ramani at another forum. I said, I looked at our company. Actually, we recently had an Instagram and LinkedIn showcase that. We have a very diverse group. We have people from many different nations with many female leaders. So I said I never had to make an extra effort to do that. It's because I think at the beginning, when you set up the company, you have that mindset. And when you interview people, and our network itself, it's very diverse. I have a lot of female network. I have a lot of, Asian Pacific network. So our company are located at 3 different sites across 3 different continents. And we definitely, already including and inviting diversity into our own existing culture and footprint. And people feel connected. When they come to interview, they see a diversity already existed. So actually, it's really very easy for them to engage, to connect, to have this dialogue. But that being said, we still try to promote that, right? So that's the reason our need of the communication put together this diversity panel and make us feel really proud to work in an environment like that. And when we also, getting into, so this morning we just had a company-wide Zoom-based Jeopardy, and so one of the category is Hi-Fi Bio, and we were asking all those questions. Then we realized, wow, there's certain things about certain people across different teams we didn't even know about. So had a great time there, and just encourage people to be open-minded, to be embracing this diversity. I think, it goes a long way.
Now, I think Nadine, I believe, as audio issues have been fixed, so we'll give it a shot here. Clarissa talked a little earlier about unconscious bias, right? And I think it's a real issue that we as leaders, as women, as a white woman, I'm reflecting on it. So I know, Nadine, you wanted to weigh in on that area. So why don't you talk a little bit about how we can combat that in the industry?
Exactly. I hope, okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
That's
finally.
working.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree. As we said, I was hearing you, and as we said, as women leaders, we need to be very agile and flexible. So this is a proof of it. So I agree with everything that was said by my esteemed colleagues before. So thank you, Amanda. With regard to the unconscious biases, I think as women, we really need to be aware of it, of this, because traditionally we think that men are the ones with the unconscious biases, but no, we need, and we sometimes, and I heard my colleagues mention this earlier. And just to go to an anecdote, just a few weeks ago, I was using all the opportunities that we have now with women leaders, Kamala Harris. We have different women leaders that have taken position recently, and there was a program on TV where I took the opportunity. I took my 10-year-old daughter, saying, well, this is going to be a showcase of 3 women, very high-level women from different industries. You'll have the chance to see what they've done, what they're thinking. looking at it and systematically the three interviews that were made, the journalists who, might I say, were female journalists, they did some close-ups on the time the women took to change their shoes and arrange their hair. I took this opportunity to make a fit in front of my daughter and saying, well, this is, what is wrong, because we know to go to the essence of what people have to say and not the shell of it. And this is, I think, more and more, it might, it's an anecdote, but I think that it has a very profound turn to it. And as women leaders, this is what we have to do: show the example, showing by example. When we lead our companies, and I didn't have a chance to chime in into the leadership style. When we bring our whole selves to our organizations, I think acknowledging that we're women, acknowledging that we have a different way of doing, is a strength to our companies. And with the cultural backgrounds that we have, for example, myself, I come from a Haitian background. My parents came from Haiti, full professors, professionals. When they came here, education was really key. And this is something that I bring to my daughter, that I bring as well, the perseverance aspect of it, to my team members. And these are all strengths that we bring and that we have to continue bringing to our organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadine. We're glad to have you back and speaking. Annie?
I'm glad to be here.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes. So Annie, yeah, you're here. It's perfect. Everyone's in. You had mentioned earlier about quotas, and one of the ways to solve this, and we talked about this in the opening panel as well, is quotas. Yeah. So do you think what is needed is the broad adoption of quotas in the industry?
Thank you for the question. I'm so sorry about this. I don't know what's happening, but anyway, I'm here now on the phone and on the screen. So I guess, and I'm sorry, I missed a bit of the conversation in some parts, so I hope I'm not going to be repeating myself. But yeah, on the quota side, because I'm chairing a board, the board of Genome Quebec, also as the general manager of BioQuebec, it is really important for me that the boards are represented equally, women and men. And I came to the conclusion after reading many statistics about this that unfortunately we've come a long way, but we're still very far from being 50%. In fact, here in Canada, at least, the Spencer Stewart Board Index, which compiles data from Canada's 100 largest public companies, they mentioned that by 2016 we had risen to 25% of board seats for women. So we're far still from equity. So these numbers are not impressive as far as I'm concerned, but if I'm looking in Europe, the numbers are quite different. And the difference is probably coming from quotas. In Norway, for example, it has reached the 40%. In Iceland, Spain, France, and recently in Germany, they all are almost in the range of the 40 to 60%. What we call the equity range. So, and they all came to this with requirements by law, and I think that while providing training, professionalizing the appointment process, establishing competency profiles, requiring disclosure, monitoring are good incentives. I mean, they are not automatically leading to parity, and it's unfortunate, but I think we'll only be compelled to act when legally required to do so. And I'm not talking about something that should be permanent. Here in Quebec, for instance, not too many people know that, but the government has established quotas for Crown Corporation, and since then, it has. First of all, they have reached the 50% in less than 10 years, like 5 years, and it has forced other companies that are not Crown Corporation to work towards that goal as well. So the European example, the Quebec example, the Crown Corporation, I think, have shown that it might be a way to look at it. I think if the incentives were alone enough to create the balanced board, we wouldn't be talking about it today. It wouldn't be an issue. It is still an issue. Some people are, most of the time when I'm talking about quotas, and I've made a few speech about this in different organizations, people are telling me, well, and we've seen that in the stats that Marie has shown us. One of the facts, is meritocracy. I don't know how to call it in English, but anyway, people are afraid that, oh my God, I'm only going to be appointed because I'm a woman. Well, wait a second. I mean, to that, I'm saying, for how many years have we appointed men just because they were men? I mean, they were there because with the right networks, not necessarily because they had the suitable experience or qualities. I'm saying they're there. The women with the qualities and the experience are there. We need to work hard. We need to make sure that we find them. Sometimes the quotas are there to force us to act. And I'm not talking just about men. Sometimes I've encountered women that are not necessarily proactive to look for other women. So I think it is just normal that the population, which is 50% men, 50% women, should be represented the same way in our different boards and our different high executive positions. So quotas, yes, I didn't come to that conclusion easily, but there are many women that have came to that conclusion. In Quebec, in particular, I'm thinking of Monique Jérôme Forget, who was one of our Minister of Finance. She came to that conclusion. She wrote a book about it and encouraged women to read that book. I'm not saying we should be doing this full time, all the time, but I think the incentives right now that we have are not going to lead us to that parity until I don't know how many years, but not tomorrow morning. It's going to take a long time. So we might need a little push. And we might need a little push as well for diversity. And it doesn't mean that we're going to keep it that way. It means that it's giving us the reasons to look a little harder sometimes to find the appropriate person. And I know that women have the qualities and they have the experience. It's sometimes just a little harder to find them because they're not showing up their hands like this. They're not raising their hands automatically. How many times? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm speaking a long time, but I haven't spoken for a while. But how many examples of women being called to be appointed on the board or for a high executive positions, and their reaction is not, oh yeah, thank you very much. Their reaction is, oh, are you sure I'm good for that? You really think I can do this? Do you really think I have the capacity to do this? They doubt themselves. It's not always like that, but it's been like that for a while. So we need to bring up the numbers so we give those women the experience they need so that they can accept more and be even more present. And I think if the Europeans did it, and I think we have a lot to learn from Scandinavian countries and other countries such as, Germany and others, I think why not us, And so that's a conclusion I came to.
I saw Romani and Nadine put their hand up. So Romani, you first, and then we'll go to Nadine next.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. So I agree with everything you've said, Annie. And as Marie was introducing some of the stats earlier, she was talking about the women in bio, I forget which group ran the report or ran the analysis. I quickly jotted something down, and I just want to read it out here. My eyes bulged out when I wrote it down, and I hope I think I got it right, but it was quite ludicrous, I thought. So it said, to your point, Annie, it said, reasons for not adopting more women directors. One was meritocracy. The other one given, I think item number 4, was diversity levels are already adequate.
Sorry.
And I had to write that one down. I'm like, wait, who is making that judgment? How is diversity defined? And what does adequate mean? I mean, talk about loose language, right? So, I'm quite involved in a bunch of diversity and equity inclusion initiatives here, and it is a pipeline issue. Absolutely. If we don't, if you don't if you can't see it, you can't be it, right? That's the common phrase here. So one is, how do you increase the pipeline? It's, you know, expanding your personal and professional networks, absolutely. Culturally, you've got to, if you're at the top, you've got to set the culture, as Liang said correctly so, but also reaching out to organizations that are nonprofit organizations that are set up to do exactly this, which is to bring diverse candidates under one roof, to prep them, to prime them, and then to form collaborations and liaisons with companies and venture firms and other law firms, organizations to say, look, we are here, we are educated, we are well regarded, we are well accomplished, well experienced. I'm raising my hand. So the other thing I'm spending quite a bit of time is, you know, as an entrepreneur, as a CEO of an individual who's built a company from ground up, there's a lot of bias out there, we know that. But one group that fares very, very, very poorly in this space are the investors. And there's been all sorts of analyses done. And so where are new companies coming from in our ecosystem that Kendall is well aware of here? It's from the investor base, right? You go to investors, you pitch, you get funded, or there's venture creation happening within investment firms where they're hiring people and funding them. Well, if the venture groups themselves are not diverse, how are they going to get different ideas at the table? And if they're not diverse and they're funding non-diverse groups, how are you then going to build companies that are diverse? So this problem is not a problem. It actually, as I said earlier, it represents an opportunity. And I think to Annie's point, we've got to get quickly to the 50-50 scenario. And why we're not there yet, if we have these statements like diversity is already adequate, we're never going to get there. So, you know, again, the whole sort of it's a gamut, right? It starts from the unconscious bias comments that Nadine put out there, which are so true, and we all have to be aware of those, out to the, where is the pipeline? Are we developing the pipeline? And once we've then gotten people in, can we, to Annie's point, institute more strategic policies or policy initiatives to make sure that we will, going forward, be assured of equality or of adequate representation. And so, as you all know, in California, there's a California Rule 826 that basically says by end of 2020, you have to have 1 woman director. By the end of 2021, you must have 2 women directors on your board. This is for public companies, of course. There's an argument that says, you know, we have to figure out a way as to how to extend it to private companies. Similarly, with NASDAQ here, you know, as you go public listing to NASDAQ is working with the SEC, or has put a proposal to the SEC to say, we would like to actually propose that any company, private company that is planning on going public, by the way, this is a way to get the private companies to get diverse quickly, but any private company that is planning on going public must have 2 diverse directors. It doesn't speak specifically to the women piece, but it assumes that. So to the extent we can institute strategic external policy initiatives, I think it's going to go a long way. And again, supporting what Annie said about quotas, at the end of the day, you've got to have this happening both from internal organic growth as well as from external policies.
Nadine, you want to go next?
Oh.
Are we having audio issues again?
Yeah, I think we are.
Thank you, Amanda. I totally agree with what Romani just said, and I really, in particular, yeah. And, oh, okay. So, go ahead.
I think delay. It might be a delay. Ramani, I think I wish I could speak English as well as obviously you are, because that's exactly what I wanted to talk about, is building the pipeline. And if we wait right now, if we accommodate ourselves with the fact that we are giving incentives, we're gonna be here in 50 years from now, still talking about this. So I'm not saying, as I mentioned it, I'm not saying we need to put this full time, but we need to do something to increase the pipeline and to encourage all companies, private, public, and others to do it. I just wanted to mention that here in Quebec today, on the Women International Day, there is an organization that has been launched to build CVs of women and women that are raising their hands. So we cannot no longer say, I tried, but I couldn't find a woman. We don't want that anymore. So we've created that. It's called La Cuvée, and it's a great organization. And I encourage all women in Quebec that are listening to just go and register and put their CV on. And it's going to be part of it's going to be hopefully answering the excuse that there's no women available. Amanda, can I interject on something that was discussed before when my sound was not really good? Because I'm really curious to find out about the differences between the U.S. and Canada, in particular Quebec, when it comes to obstacles for women, because you've talked about women and COVID, and there's more women that have lost their job or needed to they have multitasking. And here in Quebec, in Canada, we have, particularly in Quebec, we have our daycare and public daycare, which allows a family, for not that much money, to have a daycare center for their kids, which we hope we think is really helpful. I don't think you girls have that in the U.S. So I'm just wondering, we have maternity leave, for instance. We have all sorts of. Is this something that you think has that is making it more difficult for you in the U.S.?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm Canadian, so I'm from Montreal, so I have lots of friends out there, and I know the whole, what they get for maternity, a first child. I'm from Quebec, of course, first child, second child, third child. It's amazing what you all have there. I think, recently, and maybe Kendall, you've got more background on the policy on this. I think there was just a recent extension of the maternity policy from 6 weeks to maybe 8 weeks for women, or something ridiculously low like that. So yes, that is a huge obstacle for women, and therefore, I think, frankly, Zooming, COVID, working in this situation as we are, probably helps those women who are sitting at home, who've just had a baby, but who want to get back to work, but can't because for whatever reason. It absolutely, it's a challenge up here.
Yeah, I can reiterate that. And I'll tell you, in Massachusetts, pre-COVID, we were fighting insane traffic. So again, I have 2 small children. I was commuting 4 hours a day to get into Cambridge.
Wow.
I was lucky if I saw my kids for 30 minutes a day, right? And fortunately, I've got a good support network, and that's critically important for me to be successful in a leadership capacity, but not everyone is as fortunate to have a network like that. I have a strong family network and otherwise. So yeah, so many challenges, and we typically get 8 to 12 weeks paid maternity leave, and that's what they do in the United States generally. So it is absolutely a challenge. And if you're making a decision between climbing the corporate ladder or being a present parent, right now, that's a decision you have to make oftentimes.
Yes.
Clarissa, I see you nodding there.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, Annie. I benefited greatly from, the 1 year maternity leave that everybody just accepts, and also with the immigration policy, because we have lots of caregivers here in Montreal, and then after they've caregived for 4 years, then they gain their Canadian citizenship. We need that. We don't have appropriate renewal of our population. So these are really win-win policies that enabled me to be a professional woman, that along with the support of my family. But if it wasn't for that, I don't know how I would have done it.
And I think from a leadership capacity, though, we can take some of that and be understanding and offer flexibility. And obviously COVID has forced us to do that in a very expedited fashion, but it's something that I think will continue to play an important role as we're recruiting talent, as we're allowing folks to grow within the organization. There has to be that element of flexibility that is built in, because I'm sure other people on this panel can attest, but I feel the pressure to be in the office every single day because I want to set the example for everyone else. But sometimes I do that at the jeopardy of going to my son's game or whatever it is. So to be able to give some of that grace and flexibility to employees, I think will be something that is positive that comes from COVID.
And
yeah,
maybe
we're probably going to go back to pre-COVID exactly as it was. But that's probably one of the positive coming out of the COVID is that we're going to go more into an hybrid kind of system where virtual work, working from home can actually work, and we can be efficient, and so it allowed us to probably speed up the process big time in terms of changing mentality, and in terms of you know, where we can work from to accomplish our objectives and attain results, and saving time, like Kendall said. I mean, 4 hours of driving, that's crazy. I mean, it's when you add those up at the end of the year, can you imagine the number of days that you have spent in your car? Wow, you know, it's so we need to. That's good. Thank you for answering this. That was a good point.
Can I just add one more? Amanda, one more thing here. You know, I think as women, I think again goes back to perhaps the point of vulnerability. We tend to want to do it all. We tend to, well, not do it all. It's okay to want to do it all. We tend to want to be super women, right? We want to be able to say, we don't need help. I got it. I got it. But it's actually okay, as Kendall said, to say, no, I need help. And I got to sacrifice this, or I need someone to take over that piece of my life so I can excel in this piece of my life. And it doesn't mean that I'm anything less than. I'm still bringing my whole self to everything I do. And so giving ourselves the okay to say, I'm going to actually ask for help in this area and that area so I can excel in this area, because that's also helping the economy. The other thing here is that daycare is not subsidized by anything. It's all private. So we're paying a lot of money out of pocket, unlike in Canada, which I think my friends used to tell me it was $5 a day. And maybe something. Yeah. So that's another obstacle, is just, you know, our own, the limitations we place on ourselves to say, oh no, I have to do everything because I've got to show that I can be a leader and I can multitask and juggle. And you don't have to do that. It's okay to say, no, I'm going to give this to you so I can work on that.
And Romani, I would add, accept that it can be done differently than we thought it would be done. Like it's as women, sometimes we are, it's difficult to give some of the tasks on the list to, I don't know, our spouse or somebody else. But on top of that, accept that the person in question might do it differently than we would have done it. So we have to look at ourselves sometimes, because we exactly what you said, we tend to say, we're going to do it. Don't worry about it. I mean, I've already thought about it, so might as well do it, kind of thing. But indeed, they are. How many men, I'm sure, are saying, you know, I'm there to help, but you're not allowing me to help. And it's true. Sometimes we don't do that, and so we need to look at ourselves about that.
I'm just gonna pause here real quick. One, just to remind folks that are listening to this that we will have a question and answer period at the end. So if you want to start populating your questions please feel free to do so. And then I think we can bring Nadine in. Nadine, have you rejoined us?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. So then it will be audio only. It seems that the audio works. So so that the question, just to go back to a point that was made by Annie and continued by Romani, saying that, you know, for the quotas and for the importance of quotas, I totally agree with quotas. But as Annie mentioned, in a timely fashion, I think is crucial, because we shouldn't have it on an ongoing basis. And with regard to the experience of, you know, when people call you to join a board, for example, and asking now the question, and personally, I had this experience. I not only say, am I right for the position, but I want to make sure that the position is proposed to me, not because I'm a woman and on top of it that I'm Black, but because of my expertise. And this is something that people should be very wary about, because it's good to have quotas, but it's not to the detriment of the expertise and the excellence. Because when you get to the top, people ask, and it's really, it's a shame when people are asking themselves, whether you're there because you're a woman and because you're Black. So, you know, for example, for me, I've joined the organization that I'm at since 2009. I've, you know, worked my way up, And it's because of the work, and I believe not because I'm a woman and I'm Black that I'm president and CEO right now. So it's something that should be always in the minds as well when we're thinking about quotas.
Nadine, I cannot agree more with you. It's like, you're totally right. And often I've said to myself, you know what, if they think I've got the position just because I'm a woman, I'm going to show them it's not the case. Because it's up to us at one point to just say yes and accept the fact that maybe they are using the argument of I need a woman on my board or I need a woman there, and just take the position and show them that you deserve it and you're going to be doing great and more than what they thought you'd be doing, and you surprise them. Because if you stop yourself by saying, oh, they might be calling me because I'm a woman only or Black, like you just mentioned, you know, you might stop yourself from an opportunity. And I'm not so sure WANs are asking themselves that question. Are they calling me because I'm actually qualified for this? I don't think they're asking themselves that question. I think they just pick it up and they do it. And some of them are good, excellent, and some others are not. And it's the same thing for us. We cannot, you know, we're going to have to accept that, you know, some of us in the women field are not necessarily great. But if we think we can do it, let's do it. Let's accept. Let's just say I'm doing it, and I'm going to show them.
I understand your point, Annie. I think it's quite admirable. But just the flip side of that is that, you know, when people are recruiting for, you know, boards of publicly traded companies, they're looking for ex-CEOs as the profile, right? Unfortunately, there are not a lot of female ex-CEOs. You know, there was this famous quote at the JP Morgan meeting a couple of meetings ago. I don't know if you remember it. There were more CEOs named Michael than there were women CEOs. Like, that's how sad the situation is. But the point is, if that's one of your criteria, an objective criteria to be on the board, it's a very small pool. And it is important to have experience as a CEO, to be an independent member, to advise another CEO. So the only point I want to make is that, yes, we have a problem with the pipeline, but sometimes there are the realities of that competence. And I kind of commend Nadine, because whenever I'm invited to a board, often because I'm an ex-CEO, I still always ask, can I add value? I mean, I don't want to join a board if I don't think I can add value for whatever reason, the stage that they're at, or this or that. And that's just important. And that goes to our self-awareness and our confidence, right? I believe in my capabilities, but sometimes I want to make sure that, one, I can learn, but that I'm also going to add. And I think that's the question that you were asking, Nadine, and I think that's perfectly reasonable. If I may, I just want to bring up another aspect of the pipeline and of diversity, particularly with respect to venture capital firms. So we all know that they're extremely non-diverse for whatever reason, and we'd love to change that. But as a young CEO, when I started my first business when I was 26, I pitched to all of these people. I'm sure there were inherent biases there. I never personally had overt bias. No one was closing the door to me. I was opening doors and starting my businesses and getting finance. Yes, it took a long time, but the point that I want to make is, once I had success in my first business, all doors were wide open, because our businesses are meritocracies. My investors, however non-diverse they were, all they cared about was whether we were going to meet our milestones or not. And when we did, the investments piled on and the resources and everything else. So that's been my experience, that success begets success, and that there is a meritocracy in terms of them. And they don't care who I hire and who's on my team, as long as we get things done. So, I mean, that's a benefit of working in a high science knowledge field as we are.
Can I make a comment on that, Amanda, if that's okay? Just yeah. So Clarissa, I agree with everything you've said, and you know, we're kind of moving maybe a little bit into, my comment is about entrepreneurship and just fundraising as a woman co-founder and CEO. You know, I have found, and I agree with you, meritocracy is everything. Success begets success. That's the way to move things forward. But I have found, as a woman, if you are pitching as a woman to an investor base, oftentimes the question that comes back at you, or the dialogue, the narrative is about, oh, well, how are you going to manage for risk? How are you going to address this problem if you run into this problem? Whereas if you're a man pitching to the same audience, the focus, the narrative is more on, wow, talk to us how you're going to build the company. How are you going to create value? It's not about problem solving. It's not about managing the risk, but rather about the future. And so again, take it for what it's worth. Is that self-limiting, or is that limiting the woman, the woman from getting the investment? Maybe yes, maybe no. But it is interesting that the types of questions as a woman one would get are different from those that you might get as a man. But to your point, if you can't come to the table having shown prior success, whether you're a man or a woman, chances of getting funded are going to be diminished.
I want to bring Liang into the conversation here. I see you nodding to that point. Do you have any thoughts about female entrepreneurship and the challenges there?
Yeah, I mean, I've been, meeting many investors along, and I agree with, both elements Clarice and Ramani brought in. Having a good track record is really important. But clearly, I would imagine although, it's hard for me as a scientist, I wanted to do really data to compare, but just from anecdotal evidences, you would see their attitude towards men, women, during the fundraising process would have differences. So the thing, I think is, and like Ramani is very passionate about, is bringing diversity into that investment community. And I've been dealing with, some female investors. Actually, I have 2 female investors on my board, and clearly, you see different perspective. Diversity does bring in more values. Clearly, I just think, and from our female leader perspective, and back to Nadine's point and Clarissa's point is, you just have to be good, regardless you're a man or woman. we just have to be confident to be good at what we're doing, and that's what we go out. And during my fundraising, personally, I didn't really experience anybody say, oh, I don't want to talk to you, or I give you a hard time because you're a woman. I didn't expect that, and I do felt it was pretty successful. So I thank a lot of my investors. So over the years, I raised over $150 million, and we are raising more. So I think the point is to be able to be confident yourself. I think back to some of the earlier points, we as a female leader just as strong, as confident as a man? And sometimes when I look at other junior leaders and between men and women, I do observe some differences. And at one of the earlier conversations, I told other people, I feel maybe I'm an outlier. I just felt like I'm just as confident as any male. I'm overconfident. If I do my self-rating, probably I give myself higher than other people would give myself, because you have to be confident. If you don't believe in yourself, how could others believe in you, right? So you go out fundraising, you have to tell people, I'm going to build this great company. You have to be passionate about, which is playing to my strengths. And you have to be confident. You have to tell them, yeah, I cannot guarantee you 100% success, but I think I have a better chance than other leaders to do this because I have this unique strengths, unique scientific knowledge, unique leadership skills. So you have to just build yourself to be a strong leader in a way that I'm coaching some of the younger female leaders, and a lot of times is about confidence. And I want to also add one point about women during COVID-19 or maternity leave situation, and back to Ramani's point, saying how to really form a partnership to help to share the work. Like in our company, when there's there's people who is taking care of their kids during COVID-19. And, you know, we would have conversation to give fathers also opportunity time stay with their children. You know, they can bring the kids out. You know, sometimes in an informal talk, I say, you should bring your kids out to play sports, you know, give your wife some time to do what she needs to do. So if you encourage men to do the sharing the burden thing, and because I have a wonderful spouse, my, you know, husband did more bring up our daughter than I did. And why couldn't men share the same? And, you know, there are big pharma's institute paternity leave. And if anybody in our company has a baby, the father wants to take time off, you know. So it has to be shared in the society, everything. Yeah. And I just think we as female leaders encouraging our male partner to share the burden, as well as be confident no matter, you know, whether you go out fundraising or taking on a leadership role. And sometimes it might be a bit scary, just challenge yourself. Yeah, I think that would be good.
So picking up on that, Liang, you know, about female leadership, we've all talked about mentoring, right, and the importance of that for women in younger positions in their careers as well as older. So maybe I'd like to throw it out there. Why do we think that's so important if we want to grow this, you know, this pipeline of this next generation of female leaders? And I will go to Nadine first. Oh.
So I needed to cut down my video. That's why I figured that for the audio. So this is for sure, it's important to have mentorship. And if I understood your question correctly, Amanda, to have mentorship programs to be able to increase the pool of young female, to attract them to the industry, to attract them into the STEM fields. I think it's crucial. Because, and it goes back as well to the what we said about promoting women in C-suite positions. I think to have a sustainable pool of individual, we need to go as far back, you know, early as, you know, high school, and be able to expose young girls, young women to STEM fields, and to show them that there are women who are in leadership positions, that they can go there if they want to, and to be involved. And actually, there's I'm going to make a pitch about a new project, a project that was launched, I think, in 2019, the Prosperity Project, led by Pamela Jeffrey. That really alludes to this, not only in STEMs, but just to make sure that women, that we can have a mentorship network for women who want to prosper in their fields. So this is something I invite everyone really to look at what they're doing. There's a report that was recently published about the effect of the pandemics on women, and how can we mentor young women as well in different fields like STEMs, like in the finances as well. We mentioned the VC, in the VC world, that there are not enough women. So I think those alternatives, or those activities, need to be promoted by us and by men as well, because again, we need to work with men as well, not to forget them. We have great complementarity with our male colleagues.
Kendall, I see you nodding there, and then I'll go to Ramani.
Yeah, I mean, I think having a mentor is so critically important, and being a mentor, right? And there's this misnomer that a mentor, if you're a woman, has to be a woman. I have men mentors, I have women mentors, and I use them all in a different way. And sometimes you just need a sounding board. Sometimes you need somebody who's a bit more seasoned to bounce a situation off of that's not immediately in your network. It's lonely at the top sometimes, and you need someone to be your champion and your ally. And then sometimes you need a mentor to help make opportunities for you, right? Every opportunity I've received as I've grown in my career trajectory has been helped along by having a mentor who was really a champion for me. So you got to be a champion for yourself, but it's great to have an ally and somebody, a support system that can help you along the way. But then it's important to remember when you're here, you have to give back and you have to help make those opportunities for other people again, for young women, for young men, for a diverse network. So that's kind of our give back. We have to make sure that we're doing the same thing for the future generation.
Yeah.
Ronnie, you actually talked about the focus on something called sponsorship and why that's important. Can you unpack that a little bit for us?
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. I was just going to make a comment on that. I mean, I agree with everything that was said by Nadine and Kendall and others about mentorship and the need to have advocates supporting you. I think the notion of sponsorship is very different from mentorship. You know, a mentor is someone who guides you and who sort of leads you down a path. A sponsor who's actually someone vocally advocating for you, so really pulling you up. A mentor is pushing you up. And a sponsor is really pulling you up. And so, you know, if you've got mentors who are supporting you from all angles, but you don't have someone who's really willing to throw their neck out for you and say to someone, hey, this person is really worth talking to and worth hiring, then, you know, you're kind of doing it on your own, which in and of itself is not a bad thing because you've got a mentor or support network here. But sponsors are something that, you know, I have, you know, whether it be mentors or sponsors, actually, I have actively sought them out. And this is the other, I think, misnomer or misstep that women often take. They just say, well, I don't have anyone coming to me. No one's helping me. And so I think, you know, in the context of, or in the vein of make it happen, you got to take the ball and you got to run with it. So no one's going to sit there and say, or no one's going to come to you and say, well, let me help you, although they may at times. It's really, as Kendall said, you've got to be your own advocate. You've got to take the ball, run with it, and along the way, solicit input. You're not going to get everyone. I've had people say to me, sorry, I don't want to be your mentor, in those exact words. And it's just that either they were busy or they didn't think they could add value to me, value in terms of what I was hoping to get, or that they just didn't want to add value, even if they had it. And that's okay. There are thousands of other people you can choose from, to the point of networks and diverse networks, etc. But I think the sponsor is something we can't lose sight of as we continue to seek mentors. Make sure that we should continue to make sure that we're also actively identifying people who can vocally be sponsors for us, really see what we bring to the table and elevate us, really help pull us to the next level. And I will say also, on the point of giving back, I mean, the pay it forward model is what makes the world go round. And we all, I think, at the end of the day, want to leave the world in a better place than we found it. And so it's in that vein where we say, do our best to just help younger girls, younger women step up to what they can be, because ultimately, you know, I was listening to a Simon Sinek podcast the other day. I don't know if any of you have heard of him, but he's a motivational speaker and he's just very well regarded. And he defines courage as, you know, if nobody is there, if you don't know that you have a support network, it's very difficult to have courage. But if you know that someone's got your back, it's not very difficult to just step up. So if we can show a girl, a woman or two, hey, I've got your back, that propels them forward in a way that we could never imagine.
So we have about 10 minutes left in our discussion today. I kind of wanted to do a round robin as the last question, which is a bit ask all of you, if you could give a piece of advice to your younger selves, maybe like, or much earlier in your career, or a piece of advice to the audience, just generally, what would that one, you know, thing you'd love to leave everyone with? And I see you all reflecting. Who would like to go first? I will not. Ramani's already up. All right, she's got her up there. Go ahead.
I'm going to say, don't carry fear. Don't be fearful. Don't be afraid of change. Be curious. You know, curiosity is, I think, what has allowed me over time to just navigate through my journey, which I started off as a scientist and I moved into executive ranks, and then, you know, constant doubt, constant fear. Can I, will I, should I? But I think you cast fear aside, and if you look at it, if you approach it as curiosity, I think it takes on a very different perspective.
Okay. What about you, Kendall?
So similar. I think just having confidence in yourself, and I can only speak for me, but I have a real ability to be incredibly self-critical. And I think sometimes you have to give yourself some grace and know that as long as you're doing the best that you can, then you're doing a good job. And to have confidence in your ability. And it's something, I mean, I can reflect back on a younger version of myself, but it's something I do every single day when I wake up in the morning, and I give myself a morning pep talk. We've got this, we can do this, let's go.
Annie?
Yeah, be confident. Don't doubt yourself. I have a young daughter. I have two. I have one who's 12 years old, and she's a dancer. And she keeps coming to me and telling me, I'm not good enough. I don't think I can do this. I don't think I'll win this competition. I don't think. And I'm like, are you going to stop at one point and start believing in yourself? She's like, I'm just like you. You keep saying that yourself. Every time you have a speech engagement, something, you keep saying that. So I'm just like you. And she just returned it back to me right in my face. So if I was younger and I was talking to myself, I'd say, be confident, don't doubt yourself, and don't take anything for granted. We are very privileged to live in countries like United States or Canada right now. There are women around the world that would not be able to have this conversation right now. We need to make sure our kids, our daughters, and our boys know about the fact that in different countries we're not there yet. There's still a lot of work to be done about women equality, and it's not because we have reached a point here in Quebec where I live, where it seems for my daughters that they can accomplish everything they want, that it is the case for women around the world. So don't take anything for granted. Things can go back sometimes quickly. And so that's certainly something I would leave as a message.
Okay. Clarissa?
Yes, that's a very good point, Annie. I'm glad you brought it up, because we really are incredibly fortunate. Despite all the disparities that we've highlighted, we are fortunate in that, yes, our daughters and sons born today, I think they have a much better view, and that they'll want to be equal partners in all aspects of their life together, including childcare, and that they'll make joint decisions to enable whoever's career and take turns. I really do believe that we're heading in that direction. If I had advice to give my younger self, I would tell myself not to do everything, because I tried that and it was very painful. As I've gotten older, I've learned to ask for help and make the trade-offs. Just accept that you can't do everything, accept the consequence of your decisions. Yeah.
If I might add, I love what Clarissa just said, but I'll give it a little twist. You can accomplish everything you want, sometimes not at the same time.
Correct. That's right.
Nadine?
Yes. So what I would, I totally agree with what my colleague said. And what I would add as well from my own experience is to take every experience that you've had throughout life, be it positive or negative, it will, there are some learnings from them. And this is a baggage that you should always carry throughout your career, and it will help. It's something that has helped me through the negative ones, positive ones, and learning. What I would tell my younger self is really start by learning who you are, really defining yourself before you get to the other step. You know, when we're leaders, we need to know who we are, how we lead, in order to be able to best serve the organizations where we are.
Last word to you, Leanne.
Yeah, I would give myself, one word, just perseverance. And I think I still say that to myself. Along the way, there's so many times people discourage you, tell you not to do, not believing the direction you are needing. As leaders, you cannot do things just to pleasing everyone. I think that's another trait I actually see among a lot of female leaders, and including myself. I even sometimes to this day, I bounce ideas with some of my leaders around. I was like, is this really trying to pleasing everyone? Is that too much of pleasing? I do realize that, and sometimes as leader you have to make tough decisions, and percent the direction, even, you know, majority probably sometimes doesn't follow behind you. So it needs to be strong.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to Kendall, Romani, Clarissa, Liang, Annie, and Nadine for the great discussion today. And thank you to all you listening out there for your feedback and input. I'm going to pass the mic, metaphorical mic, I suppose, back to Amy, who for some final words.
You there?
Okay, so, yes, I'm here. Sorry, my screen's got a little bit tangled, so to speak, and I'll try to turn my webcam on. This was an amazing program. I'm inspired and motivated and so impressed with you women. So that was fantastic. And so just to wrap up, really wanted to thank all of you on behalf of the Boston chapter and the Montreal chapter. And thank Coriolis Pharmaceuticals sponsorship to both the WIB Greater Montreal and WIB Boston chapters, and with a donation and the event sponsorship for today that allowed this event this event focused on diverse leadership and inclusive environments that could really serve as a role model, as a model for the biopharmaceutical industry. So thank you very much for that support, as well as to all of our chapter sponsors. BioQuebec wanted to thank the National Bank for your continued support. And thanks to all of our attendees for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you at a Women in Bio event, hopefully in the real world, and the analog event in the near future, but in the meantime, digitally, virtually. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Amanda, for moderating.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Amanda.
Organized.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. It was very inspiring.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.